The key to a successful modern business is diversification. You think about that now.
I have thought about it. You're fired.
Hello and welcome to the Twilight Pwn, the internet's third most popular Twilight Zone podcast. My name is John. I'm joined by my co-host Fred.
Hello.
How you doing this week, Fred?
I'm good, although the news just came over the transom that there's yet another Twilight Zone podcast. Or there's actually two new ones that we have to rumble with.
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I think you said a while ago, it's like mushrooms after a rainstorm or like whack-a-mole, you know? One finishes their run and another one just pops up. There's another one out there that apparently is a Twilight Zone podcast. You can just decide to ignore the fourth season if you don't want to deal with it. Yeah. I didn't know that was an option on the table.
Yeah. If someone had told us long ago, we would have made some different decisions around here.
They're almost done. That's what happens when you just ignore the fourth season.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm tempted to try and start up another rivalry, but I think people just kind of think I'm joking when I'm like, I'm coming for you, new meat. They're just like, hey, I like the Twilight Zone too. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. And then they don't respond to my tweets, so it just feels a little sad.
You've adopted the Twilight Zone. I was born into the Twilight Zone.
Oh, you're Bane. I knew we'd get to it at some point. But let's show them how it's done, Johnny.
All right.
Show those new kids how to rock. What are we doing this week?
This week we'll be discussing a Kind of Stopwatch. This was a 5th season episode, the 124th of the production run. It aired originally on October 18th, 1963.
Submitted for your approval, or at least your analysis, one Patrick Thomas McNulty, who at age 41 is the biggest bore on Earth. He holds a 10-year record for the most meaningless words spewed out during a coffee break. And it's very likely that as of this moment, he would have gone through life in precisely this manner. A dull, argumentative big mouth who sets back the art of conversation 1,000 years. I say he very likely would have, except for something that will soon happen to him. Something that will considerably alter his existence and ours. Now you think about that now, because this is the Twilight Zone.
I think that's one of my favorites of his. You think about that, you little scamp.
Now you go off in the corner and you take a long, hard think about that one.
You think about what you watched.
Yeah. It is kind of cute how he starts it off by saying, like, submitted for your approval, or at least your analysis.
Whatever, just stick around, like, it'll be okay.
I'm not asking you to approve of this.
Yeah, that might be a stretch, folks.
We like to write our own Serling-style intros. Yet another segment that other podcasts don't offer you.
Yeah, that's value added.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much value
you're getting. You're getting the chamois. Yeah. You're getting a lot.
My intro doesn't add a whole heck of a lot of value, so I'm going to get it out of the way real quick.
All right, sounds good.
Meet McNulty, a 40-something bore whose primary purpose in this stretch of time we choose to call life has been to talk the ears, eyes, and nose off of any unfortunate soul unlucky to find itself in the vicinity. A grade A motor mouth with a full tank of gas, McNulty never passes up the opportunity to add an adjective or adverb, a subject to an object, and to generally yammer on until the proverbial cows have returned to their domicile. In his habit of padding out patter with preposterous prepositions, McNulty reminds me of someone. I can't quite think of who it is, but it's someone who talks a lot in this weird way. I'm sure it'll come to me, but in the meantime, enjoy the Twilight Zone.
Yes, we are in similar waters today.
Yeah, that was kind of one thing. There's no songs that are about stopwatches. So I was like, ooh, John's going to be screwed this week. All right, let's hit it.
Allow our protagonist, Patrick Thomas McNulty, to introduce himself. He'll only need a moment of your time, presuming the moment in question is of such monumental proportions that it could be measured in eons and eras as opposed to minutes and hours. Mr. McNulty is a talky-talk, a word bird, a conversationalist par excellence, with a penchant for piling on pronouns and parentheticals until his conversation partners are crushed under the sheer volume of his parley. If you know of but a single thing regarding the character of myself, one Rodman Edward Serling, it would be the item of my character that I cannot abide such a long-winded personage. Such people have no place on the taut, lean, and mean TV machine that is the Twilight Zone.
That was great. Oh, what was that? Par offalance.
Yeah,
That was the pick of the litter. Right
You know, Google Docs has got offalance highlighted because it's not a word, but I like to think they got it highlighted because they're like, good, John. You did good there.
Little pat on the back. It's right up there with, what was it? Was it me or you who did ventriloquist with a bent will to twist? No, that was me.
That one
but
was
you had
yours.
a
There were some
daguerreotype of
others.
the very type.
Yep.
Yeah.
Quality wordplay.
Yeah.
That's what you're getting.
Yeah, that's what you're getting. And you're also going to get a discussion of the plot. But before we get there, spoiler warning, we're about to ruin this episode. So if you haven't seen it, check it out on Netflix or Hulu, or for free on YouTube, or buy the DVDs and Blu-rays. But we're about to spoil it as we get going with the plot right now. We're introduced to our main character. He's working in an office that I was all prepared to make a joke about. Oh, it's just another Twilight Zone anonymous business office. But we later learn, maybe I'll save that cherry for later, but we later learn that they do something in this office as opposed to just look at charts. And we very quickly learn that he's a talker. To say that he talks a lot would grossly understate like his character.
Yeah, we get it. Here's just a talky taste.
You think about that now. You cannot run a business by standing still in a rut. A business has got to move and it's got to progress. Got to keep pushing and punching and prodding until it gets diversified. That's the word. That's the key.
I don't know about you, but with that little cadence that he had, he reminded me of a friendly version of the push, push, push guy.
Yeah.
It was like a not, panic attack inducing version of that guy.
Yeah.
Willoughby.
Diversify. Yeah. Yeah, he's kind of a chatterbox. He really kind of fills every waking breath with words. And he's also got a lot of business theories, which he's apparently been putting into the office suggestion box for the past 11 months. And it's finally time to get his meeting with the boss and talk him over. Before he gets in there, though, he has a little bit of banter with his coworkers, who all seem to find him as annoying as I did.
Yeah, it's kind of, I guess maybe it's a TZ trope of, coworkers hating the main character for various reasons. In miniature, it's just because he does his job efficiently. Here, the guy won't shut up, so...
I love your sticking up for the guy in miniature. I sort of feel like you felt a kinship for the guy who just kind of goes into work and silently does his job and then leaves.
I didn't love the episode, but damn it, I related to it. It was just a little too real.
Anyway, back to the episode. On the way in to have this meeting with his boss, McNulty asks the secretary out for dinner, and because he didn't do it in quite a harassing enough tone.
Yeah, he didn't actually grab her while saying it. So.
Yeah, she shoots him down.
I've got that pwn from the lady, but the pwns fly fast and furious at this fella.
Yeah.
He's probably our most pwned protagonist, so I just strung them together, if that's okay. I hope I don't get spoilers in here, but let's just let it fly.
If I was starving to death and you were the last man on Earth and it meant my survival, I might be. But I'm not, you're not, and it doesn't. So drift, McNulty.
There's a 10-inch television set in my sister's apartment. Connie, it dates back to 1948. She's got 5 kids. The apartment's a 6th floor walk-up, and it's boiling hot. But I'll tell you, there's one thing that apartment don't have that makes it all worthwhile. It don't have McNulty.
You getting respect from me is about as easy as flagging down a cab on 46th and Broadway at 8 o'clock on New Year's Eve. In the rain. You know something, McNulty? You're the one guy that makes me wish they never repealed Prohibition.
With this little gizmo, I can stop trains, tanks, subways, anything.
What about your mouth?
Funny.
Yeah, and that's not even all of it.
I also like how everybody around McNulty sort of seems to take on his cadence when they're insulting him.
Right.
It's just one of those guys that when you hang out with them, their slang rubs off on you or something like that.
Totally.
Totally.
There's when you're in a foreign country and you start getting a little bit of the lilt.
Yeah. I also at the very end of the episode, this is jumping ahead, but I think he makes another pass at the secretary. And she kind of she can't quite summon up the whole thing about if I was the last woman on Earth, my therapist advised me to see me. So she just says something like, McNulty, die. It's just very can't quite get it up at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
But we're still early on.
Yep.
And on the way into the meeting,
boss.
He walks in. We get Serling's intro, which is very glass houses. And then McNulty's in the office, and his boss is going through the suggestions.
And here is one of your suggestions, dated March the 13th. Make hot dogs flat so that they can fit easily into a hamburger bun.
How about that? You think about that now.
Make tin cans square so that they can be stacked together more easily in garbage cans.
Isn't that a gas?
Put small pontoons in field packs of soldiers so that when they cross rivers, they can get across by themselves.
That one is worth $1 million just as it stands. You see, the soldiers go into the water and they got these cans on the back with air.
Cooper Corporation makes ladies' foundation garments. It doesn't have anything to do with hamburgers, hot dogs, tin cans, or national defense. And not one of your 340 suggestions, I repeat, not one of them has anything remotely to do with this company's product.
You know, honestly, the mini pontoons for soldiers or individual pontoons, that one didn't strike me as insane because it's just basically like flotation devices to get them across. I don't know. I don't know. In general, it was silly.
It kind of that one kind of took you too far into the idea because you're supposed to just reject them outright. Like the first one is hot dogs. Make them flat to fit into hamburger buns, and you're just like, okay, that's stupid. But then by the, if your mind starts to drift into a discussion of well, maybe soldiers would need that, but perhaps the equipment weight would, that's not where you want to go with this.
You've got something. We got to develop this. Let me get you a grant. Let's get some government money in there. We can work on this.
Yeah, but the boss doesn't like any of these suggestions, primarily because the company has a very specific thing that they do, which is that they make ladies' foundational garments. Is that lingerie, or is that Spanx, or what is that?
I initially assumed it was undergarments, because I just think that's the first thing you put on foundation. But then maybe foundational means these are the items that every gal needs, basic. Everyone needs a black dress, or everyone needs your simple.
Is your wife in the room? Can you Google it?
My wife leaves the house. She takes the child. There's a bitter fight every time I sit down to podcast. We make it up every week. I promise her I'm not coming back. I won't do it. But
I was kind of more thinking so she doesn't see you Googling ladies' foundational garments. I have a feeling you're going to see the raciest daguerreotypes.
Let me just throw that at Google and see what happens. Foundation garment, also known as shapewear or shaping underwear, is an undergarment designed to temporarily alter the wearer's body shape to achieve a more fashionable figure. There are a couple of, risque in the 1950s photos.
It's nice that we can still learn about new historical ways to make women feel bad about their bodies.
Totally.
There was even that. Go on.
No, did you notice that when they show the angles on McNulty, you can see that the big boss's office is just lined with glamour shots of businessmen?
It's kind of like he's got a copy of Tiger Beat Business Edition, and he's cut out the cutest new execs and put them up on his walls.
Yeah, even if it were the chairman of the board, I mean, you'd have if you had the board, it would be very traditional, staid portraits. These are it made me wonder before he mentioned what the business was. I was just what do they do? What do they sell? Are they a portrait company? Why?
Maybe they just took actors headshots to make that or something like that. They didn't really think too hard about the way it would come across.
I guess some guys like to have pictures in their office maybe of big celebrities that they've gotten to meet and shake hands with, oh, here's me with the president, but these are just headshots. I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm trying to think of what pictures I have up in my office. It's pretty hilarious stuff. There's my brother.
But is it a glamour shot of your brother?
No. Anyway, at the end of this conversation, the boss is none too pleased with McNulty, and he's fired. And in the next scene, we get a little clip, which I'm guessing that you probably got, which is McNulty singing the praise of soccer.
I did not.
Oh, wow. I was thinking you'd just be chomping at the bit to, have an unlikable character praise soccer.
Frankly, he started talking soccer, and I heard this distant clicking, and I woke up on the floor.
It's funny, but there are a lot of references to soccer in the Twilight. Soccer and baseball. A lot of, baseball's
lots
obvious.
Of baseball, sure.
But more soccer than you'd think. And I was trying to figure out why. I was looking up the history of soccer in the United States, and the U.S. men's team beat England in the World Cup in 1950. But then they didn't make the World
that
Cup for another
would've cooled
40 years, so it's weird. Like,
Obviously football and basketball were not at the level they were then.
They were considered more like niche sports, I think, at the time.
Maybe soccer and football were both like, oh, those are kind of weird sports. I wonder which one will win out. And
let's just kind of hedge our bets.
Either way. I don't know, but there's a lot of sports talk going on at the old bar.
Yeah, actually, once they get done with the footy talk, McNulty gets into kind of an intense sabermetrics conversation. It's really annoying everyone in the bar with his talk of wins without runs earned or whatever.
Yeah, I wondered, were you able to follow this conversation? I mean, I'm not a baseball man, but I kind of got the gist. Were you getting kind of nervous, cold sweats?
Here's the thing. Did
you call your brother with a lifeline?
My brother is my go-to sports lifeline, but I did have a brief and intense love of the Oakland A's in 1989.
Okay.
I grew up in Oakland, and that was like the Bash Brothers era. So I know enough to kind of have one beer with the guy and listen to him talk about baseball, and then quickly change this. I can last one beer on baseball.
Got it.
Basketball and football,
who liked baseball? John Cheever. Anything?
As long as I can draw it into John Cheever, I'm in good shape. There's a long talk about baseball, and we just get the point that he's annoying everybody, not only the people in his office, but the people in his watering hole of choice.
Yeah, question.
Yes.
I don't know if Graham's addressed this.
Yes.
And it's been a long time since I've seen it, so I may be just totally off.
Yeah.
Was that the bar from Dingle?
I don't know. It's a little bit different than the Dingle Bar. Hashtag Dingle Bar.
The Dingle Bar is it? Yeah. They opened that theme, the Dingle Bar, in Orlando a couple of years back.
I feel like there's just kind of one or two Twilight Zone bars. It looked like the
they
one
maybe
from,
just redo the walls here and there.
I did notice that there were a couple of these little jokey placards on the wall behind the bartender. Did you try and zoom in and see what they were?
No. What did they say?
Well, I'm going to reach out to the listeners here. Maybe someone with
someone has the Blu-rays.
Yeah,
maybe?
exactly. Because there's a little placard that says, "A girl is like a candy bar. Blank, 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 blank." And I was dying to know what horrible thing.
How offensive have we gotten?
Yeah,
is it racist too? I don't know. It could be with the setup.
We only hope, John. I can only hope. But yeah, that was kind of where my attention was. Once the bar is empty, there's only one person. Well, there's three people left. There's the bartender, there's McNulty, and then there's this sort of anonymously European dude. There's a lot of hilarious back and forth banter about whether the guy's name is Bots or Potts. By the way, this is a comedy episode of the Twilight Zone. In case we haven't mentioned that, all of this is hilarious. And at the end of this little convo, as sort of a present because McNulty was nice to him and bought him a beer, the European dude gives him a stopwatch on the way out. And we quickly learned that the stopwatch has...
The European guy gives him a plot device to move the plot. This might pad out the next 15 minutes.
My grandfather gave it to me. He called it a MacGuffin. Anyway, the stopwatch, we quickly learn, has the power to stop film as it freezes Joe the bartender mid, bending over to pick up some crap. And McNulty hits the stopwatch again, and it unfreezes Joe, and then it freezes him again, and, we kind of get the point. This thing stops time. And
doesn't he? He stops time right after Joe has, dropped a glass, right?
Yeah.
Common sense would have you stop time with the glass in midair. Don't you think?
No, I mean, that would make sense, but here's the thing. The way they did the effect was when they filmed the stopping, they stopped the film. But that was clever. But when McNulty walks over to talk to Joe, the actor is just standing still. So obviously the glass in midair would have been harder to pull off.
Yeah, because the effect would have been harder. They just shouldn't have done it, even though dramatically it'd be cooler.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like some directors might have pushed and tried to make that happen. But
yeah, I just had the thought that since this is an episode involving a lot of actors holding still, I was just I bet John's just filled with glee, trying to catch the one guy blinking in the background.
I caught a couple people. Yeah.
I got it.
Felt good.
I got those suckers. Anyway, there'll be plenty of that later. But in the meantime, McNulty finishes up.
Can we take just a quick sidebar?
Yeah.
You've watched The Wire, right?
Yes.
Is it hard to hear a character named McNulty for you?
Yeah, I was kind of wondering at what point he's going to, like, I don't know, throw the bartender on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, he's at the bar at, like, closing time.
Yeah.
It's like, is he about to get sloppy and then pee on the railroad tracks? I don't know.
Yeah, where's Bunk right now?
I was so bummed that no one called him McNutty.
Yeah, true. Anyway, McNulty's back in his apartment, although not before almost saying the title of the episode. I thought
oh, yes,
did you catch
yes.
this little thing? It's weird.
This is his big... I feel like if you were making a movie, this would be in the trailer.
Oh, yeah.
This is like the hero line.
Something tells me this is a very unusual watch.
I feel like Serling wrote that line of dialogue and had titled the episode A Very Unusual Stopwatch, Kind of Stopwatch.
Yeah.
And then, like, when they were almost done with production, he was like, oh, crap, a most unusual camera.
Yeah.
Oh, God. We got to rename this. Like,
some kind of stopwatch. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
McNulty's back in the apartment, and he just thinks he must have been a little boozy at the bar. Mm-hmm. So he's going to test out the stopwatch, and he quickly confirms that the watch has the awesome power to freeze goldfish.
Yeah.
Then McNulty goes to bed thinking it's all some sort of delirium tremens. Yeah. I did think it was kind of cute that to get to the next, get to the morning, they used like a clock wipe. Did you notice that? Mm-hmm. So that's cool because
very George Lucas. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
sure, that too.
It's a it's a stopwatch and it's a stop. Like how they used a cookbook swipe to serve man.
Exactly. Yeah, I actually really enjoyed the next moment when he's already frozen time once.
Yeah,
he reconfirms it on. Well, he's done it once. He gets home. He's uncertain. He reconfirms it on his fish.
Yeah,
hits the sack, and then the first thing he does when he wakes up, he's like, oh, let me check on the fish again.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me just be real sure about these fish.
Yeah. I mean, if you had the stopwatch, like, what would you do in your room? Because there's not that much stuff that's like... I guess you'd toss something up in the air and then hit it. That would kind of be the easiest way.
Yeah, it was just... I mean, I don't know if listeners can hear. There's a fan on in here. I'd maybe hit that, but I'm sure I could think of something.
Listeners can hear I have an indoor water fountain. I have an indoor waterfall.
Well, yes, that's at the grotto in the new house.
But yeah, I don't know. He freezes his goldfish, and then to make 3,000% sure, he leans out the window to freeze what's passing by. Now, in my notes, I started to write down kind of like a scoffing note, like he said earlier that he lived in a 5th floor walk-up, and then he looks out the window, and it's like clearly like Midtown, and I was about to say like that's ridiculous, but then the next shot kind of wipes that aside.
Yeah,
because he looks up, and there's like a Coast Guard helicopter, right there,
and
total blue sky behind it.
And then it just keeps going to the point where it's like, okay, I get you're doing something different, but I still want to have my joke. So let me have my joke. So apparently his apartment overlooks Red Square, the Santa Monica Freeway, a horse race, the Vancouver Wilderness, and Meatballs 4. So there's my joke, even though he doesn't even... I don't know. It gets so abstract at some point.
Yeah.
It's just like...
They're just cutting away to the world to see that his stopwatch actually does stop the whole world.
I think that's what they're doing, and I get it, but I also think...
But I want my joke.
I want my joke. I don't know. I also do feel like it's kind of piling on, and it's kind of like, check out how crazy this freeze-in time effect is. Like,
there are diminishing returns.
Yeah, once you've shown me Red Square, like, showing me an aquatic show doesn't deepen the impact. I'm not like, oh my god, it does it at the Dells too?
I know. It's I can't be sure until I see Saskatchewan freeze.
Right.
So McNulty walks back into his office, and this is where he gets the really underwhelming poem from the secretary. She's just like, can't quite manage the good one.
Off.
Yeah, so after getting shot down like that, he sort of explained the concept to the secretary.
Right, and this was important because it's been a while, so I had to grab this one.
Last night, I'm in Joe Pellucci's bar. We're sitting around talking about this and that when this funny glebe gives me the stopwatch.
Glebe.
Yeah, I know, glebe.
It's been a while. Glebe what? Glebe?
Glebe.
I thought it was glebe.
No, glebe.
Glebe. Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, I liked that. I also liked how he said it earlier too. And if you want to laugh, Google Gleep.
I just did it again. I did it like a year ago, and I'd forgotten, and then
Urban Dictionary
did it again, and it got me again.
For those who've listened to any other episodes of our podcast, I'm sorry. We used the exact same Googling Gleep and finding an uncomfortable definition on Urban Dictionary and laughing about it about a year ago. But if you want to, do it. The boss is none too thrilled to see McNulty, and he's kicking him out of his office, but not before McNulty uses his amazing time-stopping powers to steal a donut and play a dumb joke on his boss. He's not really like a big-picture thinker. Like, he's got the ability to freeze time, and he's trying to, like, use it as leverage to get, like, a 5% raise. You know?
Right.
It's like,
Totally.
What's he thinking?
Have you seen X-Men Days of Future Past?
No.
It's hard not to think of a specific scene in the movie when watching this. All I'll say is, the character in that movie definitely had more ambition and vision than McNulty.
Got it. McNulty's thinking real big now. He's not going to use the time-stopping thing to get a promotion. He's going to use it to impress the guys at the bar. And he uses his trick to mess up one of their hairs and then to drink the backwash of someone else's beer.
Yeah, that was really, really weird.
He's pretty pleased with himself for drinking someone else's spit, I thought.
Yeah, he's not even like, I'm going to get myself a free beer. He's like, I'm just going to take a couple sips of other people. But it seems like he's trying to do that, like, when he unfreezes time, they'll look at their beer and like, oh my god! But he didn't like down it. He just took a sip, and so it's very weird.
Last night I was at the Polo Grounds, and right in the middle of Ron Hunt's slide into second base, I stopped the game. Yeah, I stopped the game. I left my seat, I ran down on the field, I grabbed second base, and I moved it 10 feet. Yeah, then I went back up in the stands, sat down, and started the game again. And Hunt, instead of being out by 10 feet, was safe. And the Mets went on to win the game because Snyder doubled him home.
If you
feel like people would notice,
sigh audibly.
The fact that he's just bragging like, yeah, I screwed up a baseball game, not like I laid money and was able to affect the outcome and make a ton of money. He's just like, yeah, I effed with some people. Ha! Like, should I take it as like he's a sweet or innocent character, that he's not using this to like manipulate the stock market or like sporting event outcomes already? He's just kind of effing with people.
Well, he is a Mets fan,
I guess.
So,
he's simple.
Exactly. So with all this patter and ineffectual practical jokes with the stopwatch, McNulty drives everybody else out of the bar. And the bartender gets a nice, like, history pwn when he says something like, "You drove more guys out of saloons than Carrie Nation," who is the American temperance movement leader. Another Serling insult that took me to Wikipedia. But on his way out, McNulty's going to get a final beer. And 6 hours into the episode, he finally gets the idea to use the stopwatch for money. And he's talking about how, like, he wants to be noticed, and the only way to get noticed is to have a lot of money. And did you notice how he was describing John D. Rockefeller, and he says people notice him because he's got a lot of lettuce, a lot of cheese, and then he says a lot of kale. Did you hear that?
No, I guess that maybe slipped by me, but
I was like,
interesting.
Damn, I thought kale was like invented in Brooklyn in 2011 or something like that. But he says kale. I mean, then he says like a lot of the great Mizzou, which I dug around for on the internet, could not find it at all. I kind of feel like Rod invented that one, but anyway, so he's got a plan to rob a bank. And in the next scene, we get just such a robbery. He freezes time, walks into the bank, gets a whole bunch of cash and a cigar. But on the way out of the bank, the stopwatch falls and breaks on the marble, which is obviously a bummer. McNulty runs around the bank trying to get everyone to talk. He runs back to his office trying to find someone to talk to. And here they actually did the clever thing of they captured a guy throwing out a piece of paper, and the paper is suspended above the garbage can, and they use some sort of wire to do that. Because he runs into Mr. Cooper's office, who's making out with the secretary, which was kind of a weird non sequitur. But good.
It's kind of like the end of The Shining there.
Like, what is this? But anyway, just a little bit of inappropriate office sexuality, just to tide us over. And he runs back into the bar, doing a quick tour of the sets of this episode, and everybody's still frozen.
Please, understand. It's not my fault. I didn't do it. Oh, no. Mister, please, say something. Move! Oh, Charlie. Charlie, I'm sorry I bugged you. Charlie, move! Lady, what did you... Joe. Joe? Oh, Joe, say something. Do something, move! Joe, you insult me. I won't come here anymore. I won't make noise. I won't drive people away. Honest, Joe. Move! Oh, you, mister, please, say something. I'm sorry I took the money. I don't care about the money. All I want is to hear people say something again and to see people moving again. Oh, doesn't anybody know how to make this thing work again? Someone, help! Help me! Please, somebody move! Talk! Say something! Help!
The delightful comedy episode.
Yeah. And then that's actually kind of the last little bit, and then Serling comes on and takes us out.
Mr. Patrick Thomas McNulty, who had a gift of time. He used it and he misused it. And now he's just been handed the bill. Tonight's tale of Motion and McNulty in the Twilight Zone.
It's been a long time since I've seen it, but does Time Enough at Last, with its very bleak, black comedy ironic ending, have Serling talking over doop 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 booba dooba 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 doo? Yeah, well, this guy's gonna die alone. Yeah. No one's ever gonna talk to him again. Whoops, ow!
Also, the entire universe as we know it's over. Diddly doo 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 doo. But he's very clearly on the way to jump off a cliff. A sweet Lionel Hampton riff.
The twist ending of this is that we don't hear a gunshot when he runs off camera.
Yeah, it's tonally very, very weird. You kind of mentioned this thing of what are we supposed to infer about this guy based on the fact that it takes him forever to think of money. And I mean, I think there are three options. One is that Serling just messed up when he wrote it, and it's kind of clumsy. Two is that he's supposed to be a moral person, it doesn't occur to him. Or three, it's more that he's just kind of flighty and stupid, and it's a silly comedy episode. And I kind of feel like it's more that. But then it is interesting, I think, that the first time he uses the power for anything sort of significant from a moral perspective, stealing money, that's when it breaks.
Yeah, I don't know. I felt like this was one of those episodes where the punishment didn't seem to quite line up with the crime. I guess the fact that he suddenly is trying to actually rob with it, maybe it makes it okay, but the guy talks too much, so is freezing the world the perfectly aligned ironic comeuppance.
Yeah. It's on a different axis of character traits for someone who's just a motor mouth and then someone who can freeze time. It's a little bit like the freeze time thing would seem to apply to somebody who's rushing through their life. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or someone who...
Yeah, okay, so there's a guy who doesn't have time for his wife or his kids. Yeah. He's just busy. He's this just becomes time enough at last, more or less. But I just need more time in my day. I need to get more stuff done. I can't do it. Oh, I've got this magic watch. Finally, I can get everything done. I can get all my work done. Now I have time with my wife and my kids. Everything's great. I'm fitting it all in, and then the watch breaks, and it's I've got all the time in the world now, but I'm stuck in this moment, and I can't get out of it.
What do you think, Rod? Can we make it?
Definitely. All right, so our TZ fanfic. Just moving along.
Yeah, it's almost right, but not quite. The magic is not.
Yeah, I mean, it's not bad per se. It just feels like a note off, and it does feel very extreme for this character who's he just is a bore and kind of a goofball.
Yeah,
and it's basically if at the end of Beavis we were and we're murdering everyone and sending you to a desert island, Beavis.
Yeah, exactly. Mr. Dingle de-electrocuted.
Right. Yeah. But still ending with a doop-a-doop-a-doop.
What we doing next?
Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Yeah. Scott, Zickery, Martin Grams, Jr., Zickery, and Grams, and IMDb.
Star Pulse ranks this as the best episode of the series, and I had to Google what Star Pulse was, but apparently a long-running publication that loves this episode.
Wait, what's their beat?
I think just general entertainment news. I feel like I have a vague memory of seeing them at the magazine rack back when, B. Dalton was a thing.
Yeah, it kind of has like a real 1993 feel to it, the title.
Lou Diamond Phillips had the title role in the radio drama version of this episode. We mention those every now and again. Maybe we should have kept up with those, but yeah, I'm sure there were a lot of amusing choices. Ideas from this episode were used in a 1985 Twilight Zone episode entitled A Little Peace and Quiet. Kind of curious, maybe they revamped it a bit. One of only 3 episodes to feature the line submitted for your approval during Rod Serling's opening narration, though it is, possibly one of the most commonly thought of phrases when you think of his stuff. So that's my big trivia. What do you got?
Well, Graham's has a lot. One thing that's interesting is that the script for the episode is adapted from an unpublished short story by Jerry McNeely, which was in turn based on an idea by Michael D. Rosenthal, which is kind of
Isn't that like a Woody Allen joke? And the idea was based on a concept that they're hoping to develop into.
Yeah, it's just like one of those things where you're kind of like, did this really need a committee to come up with a stopwatch stops time? Right. But Graham's includes the idea for this the one-page synopsis of the story. It's more or less the same as the episode, but he has this McNulty has a grander plan to sort of take over the world, and so it's just a little bit bigger in scope and probably a lot more expensive to film. There's also a list of all the ideas they had for stock footage to get. They didn't get all of these, but I suspect that they'd gotten all.
They weren't able to get them all on the show. Some of those stock footages were busy. Some of them wanted more money.
Yeah, the one signed to
CAA.
Right, exactly. The stock footage.
CAA represented the monkey throwing his feces clip. Exactly. They couldn't get it.
Yeah. I mean, just to read a few ones off. Oil well gusher, they wanted. An avalanche. Freeway traffic. Atom bomb explosion.
It's funny, most of these could be just interchanged for a sexually suggestive scene.
That's true, yeah, actually. Train going through tunnel.
Yep.
I also like beer drinker. That's kind of a random one. Movie on TV screen with fast action, monkey jumping from tree to tree.
I feel like movie on TV with fast action was near the end of the list. It running out of steam for the big meeting.
It is actually. It's number 41. I was kind of wondering if I'd look through this list and just see something weird, and sexist in the middle of it, Broad being a stupid dame or something. But thankfully, it's clean. Cool. I don't know. There's a lot of interesting stuff. Nothing really big. I like how the lead actor talks about how they filmed it. It was very difficult to film because there was so much dialogue. There were so many lines to remember that they had to do a lot more cuts than normal. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of people accuse Serling of plagiarism on this one just because there's so many stories with a similar concept, but I think he pretty clearly refuted it and reasonably as well. So
yeah, he definitely put his own touch on it by adding a Serling character.
Yeah, exactly.
Ready for bios?
Yep.
Richard Erdman played Patrick Thomas McNulty. He was most famous for me as Leonard on Community, the television show that ran for several years. I think it's still running on Yahoo or something.
I like that category of most famous to John.
Yeah, it's important. It's kind of, he's a funny character then. It's kind of cool that, when it's kind of like less so the guy who... Shelley Berman. It was kind of cool. There's him doing a funny role in the 60s, and he's also funny on Curb Your Enthusiasm 40 years later.
Yeah, no, it's cool, yeah.
Herbie Faye played Joe Palucci. He was also in Requiem for a Heavyweight, and he was in the Twilight Zone sketch on the Jack Benny show that I think we threw on the Tumblr way back when. Ken Drake played a character named Daniel, I think just one of the guys hanging out in the bar. He was also in 100 Yards Over the Rim. And like we said, written by Serling, based on a story by Rosenthal, etc., etc., directed by John Rich. He only did one other episode, which was A Most Unusual Camera. So I'm guessing he was the one who pulled Rod aside at some point.
Yeah. Like how he's the king of the wacky object episode.
Yeah.
The funny comb. Get it.
The quintessential comb.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, and unfortunately, we do not have an MST3K connection this week. Normally, we like to try and find connections between Twilight Zone and MST3K, but we don't have any fresh ones this week.
Skunked. What is IMDb?
Stay tuned for next week.
What is
Good stuff in the hopper?
Oh, nice. What does IMDb have to say about the episode ratings-wise?
They give this episode a 7.8. Kind of high middle.
Yeah.
High middle.
You know, it's a comedy episode and it's not that funny, so that's, I feel like I've said that before, and I'm sure I'll say it again. But it's a little better than that because I think that, it doesn't fall flat on its face with stupid gags that don't work. It mostly relies on, what Rod Serling does best with comedy, which is people insulting each other. And I think it kind of hits it out of the park on that front. I like how bleak it is at the end in a weird way. I mean, I like how hopeless it is. I don't think it's like 8 or anything, but I think it's probably above a 5 for me. How about you?
We've watched our fair share of comedy episodes that, quote, aren't funny. And I want to say this one is, it's not as funny as a lot of the ones we've watched. Yeah. When I think of, the comedy isn't really working. Yeah. It's kind of it's like Showdown at Rance McGrew was probably the funniest one we watched, and that wasn't amazing. It was just there were some amusing parts. This is a step or two below Rance. Yeah. But it's still many, many steps above Mighty Casey and light years ahead of the bar. Still. Yeah. So it reminds me a little bit of when we watched Uncle Simon, and I think we were both just it's kind of a terrible episode, but we were so delighted by all the insults. Yeah. They kind of gave it something fun to grab onto. And this guy does take a beating, and there's some very imaginative poems. So I agree. It's not that funny, but it's kind of fun still.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point, a good distinction. It's not really funny, but it is fun. And then also, I think, the sort of more comedy, lighthearted episodes work better when they don't go for big gags, when it's more just kind of moving along at a nice clip and kind of having little funny asides. But
yeah, the plot does fly along at a pretty good clip. It doesn't drag at all. I think the dark ending could have worked a little better if they'd committed to it and not had a happy-go-lucky music playing with Rod being aw shucks, he's gonna die alone.
No, I know.
But I don't know. I kind of think this is maybe a nice 6 even.
Yeah,
it's okay. It's not great.
Yeah. All right, so, sixes for everyone.
All right.
Thank you to the listener who requested it, whose name is
Thomas.
Oh, not just requested it. Slipped us a 20 under the table.
Yes.
Thank you, Thomas. Next week, we're going to do another request. We're going to do the episode 2, which was requested by, I think, actually 2 people, or am I wrong about that?
It was requested by both Buxemia on Tumblr and Ashley on Facebook. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We also got... I feel like we've been getting a lot of notes. I want to thank people for writing in. I just wanted to give a little shout-out to a regular listener and writer-inner, Chris Depps, who just... his daughter was recently born. His first daughter was recently born, and...
congrats.
Chris Depps introduced her to the cast. I think it was a rather unfortunate choice of episodes, but I'm glad to know we'll play some small part in her life. So congratulations. And we got someone sent us in an album which we may put up on the Tumblr, which is apparently Twilight Zone related. So
yeah, we got some very nice emails.
Also,
recently.
Somebody wrote in from Germany, which made me very happy. I spent an hour writing a 2-sentence email in German back to that person, so I hope they appreciated it. So thanks, guys. And if anyone else wants to get into this, there's lots of ways to do it. John, what are they?
Yeah, thanks for all the feedback. We really appreciate it. So you can send us an email at twilightpwn@gmail.com. You can get in touch with us on Twitter at twilightpwn. You can check out our website, twilightpwn.tumblr.com. You could listen to us on any kind of podcatcher app, or you could subscribe to us on iTunes. And if you're over there, if you'd leave us a rating or review, we really appreciate those. Thanks to ARP2600, which I imagine is some kind of retiree hacker, for leaving us a review recently. Yeah. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. For a question, I was just the entire episode I was thinking, man, I wish Armbruster or Sloan had this part. Just something about this made me think, man, Armbruster would knock it out of the park.
Yeah, I could totally... This has an Armbruster Sloan feel to it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But, I don't know, Fred, if you had this magical stopwatch, do you have anything in particular you'd like to do?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you that, but I was like, that's kind of...
Yeah,
I don't know, maybe I would, walk
give you a
in-
little more time to think up a more creative question.
Yeah, I was going to say I would give myself more time to write my Serling intros, because I usually do them in the 5 minutes before we start recording, and if I had the stopwatch, I could give myself a few hours to come up with something probably not even that much funnier, so that would be my first usage. How about you?
My kiddo has developed a nasty habit of waking up between 5 and 6 in the morning most days, so I'd probably just hit the stopwatch right around 5 or 5:30 when she first wakes up, get myself an extra hour or two, and then, feel a little more refreshed during my day. Kristaps, you're gonna feel this one pretty soon, or you're probably in the shit, as it were, right now, so sympathy for you.
Yeah, okay. Well, I will talk to you next week, John. And
all right.
Yeah.
All right, talk to you later, friends.
So McNulty heads into his boss's office.
Yeah, the commissioner is really angry at him this time. Like, McNulty has just been pushing and pushing. He's going to the docks any day now. You can just tell.
Yeah. The Wire.
Yeah,
sorry, I couldn't.
Nothing more.
Couldn't quite muster up a reference to who the commissioner. It's hard as like the Wire.
Who was it? It was like his Lieutenant Rawlins.
Yeah, it gets so convoluted.
Yeah, it's so dense. It's been a while.
It's not really like the commissioner's mad. It's like the judge is mad, but then when they file an injunction, they go to the newspaper. And
right.
Anyway,